Being anxious versus having anxiety are two different things, and they get so confused all the time. To make it really clear, what being anxious is asking somebody out on a date. You're anxious. Your palms are kind of sweating. You have the butterflies in your stomach. You're nervous. You might be shaking a little bit. That is being anxious. Same when we're giving a speech. The more that you understand what it is you're going through, the more that we don't self-diagnose ourselves and also even add to a stigma, make something even more than what it is, and also hurt those that are struggling with anxiety. Anxious and anxiety get so confused so many times, and that's why I tell people I have GAD. Because they go, well, what's GAD? Well, I've been diagnosed by a doctor with GAD. It's general anxiety disorder. In fact, I've been diagnosed by a couple doctors. And no, I'm not a counselor. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I'm none of that. I've been diagnosed with ADHD. I've been diagnosed with PTSD, MDD, and GAD. When you get diagnosed, you find different ways and different treatments to work through it. For example, if I'm anxious, I'm giving a speech, I'm not going to take a fucking Xanax. Just not. That is just being anxious. Asking somebody out is anxious. And there's coping tools around that. Like if you're anxious and asking somebody out, well, write them a letter. Or you're anxious about talking to somebody, write them a letter or send them a text. There's different coping tools to help overcome the anxiousness of life. But when it comes down to anxiety, you can't mistake that for somebody who literally gets trapped in their thoughts. I mean, an anxiety attack is a buildup and a momentum of our thoughts building up. When you're anxious, you're not going to have an anxiety attack typically. I've never really, don't get me wrong, I'm sure somebody out there has, so I don't want to get criticism for that. But I've never ran into anybody who's had an anxiety attack from just being anxious. I haven't. Now, I've seen people have anxiety attacks for just trying to leave the fucking house. Because we're leaving our comfort zone and the worries of the world and all the stressors of the world and all of our thoughts on the world are coming at us from so many different angles that it starts breaking us down and chipping away at us. Next thing you know, we're shaking, we're in our thoughts and we start to disassociate and our heartbeat starts to race. And next thing you know, our stomach is tied up into knots and we're breaking down and we're crying and we're starting to hyperventilate and our body temperature is fluctuating. Even talking about anxiety, I mean, it gives me goosebumps because it brings that right to the forefront that this is something I struggle with. And talking about it brings all that shit to my head. It gets to the point that you throw up. It gets to the point that you become incapacitated and you're not able to function. So when you are explaining, that you are struggling with anxiety, make sure that you give your diagnosis to people and let them know because they will take it a lot differently. Because a lot of people will literally just think that you're anxious. That's why I think we hear so much that, just get over it or, oh, it's going to pass or don't be scared, just push through it. I will say the biggest thing, even with general anxiety disorder that I've found that's helped me out the most is actually pushing through it. It's kind of like one of those things that it is painful as fuck to push through. I mean, you might be throwing up, shaking, going in your head that you can't do it. I can't do this. I can't do this. And you're breaking down and you somehow find that little bit of strength inside you and you just latch onto that motherfucker and you push yourself out that door. It is the most liberating feeling in the world and it starts to build your confidence up and it starts to build your knowledge that, dude, once you've done something, it's easier to do it again. Because you have that confidence. Shit, I've already done this once before. I can do this again. I can do this again. I can do this again. And it makes it a little bit easier. It doesn't make it go away, but it does make it easier knowing that you have the ability to actually push through this. It's not that you're just nervous about giving the speech or anxious about giving a speech or anxious that you might fail this test because somebody's going to be mad at you or your parents are going to be mad at you. It's literally an everyday, all the time thought process of what really anxiety is like. So when you do talk about it, make sure that you're clear on the communication on it. And if somebody tries to start correcting you, feel free to inform them. A lot of what causes people not understanding the difference between anxious and anxiety is that we don't share because we don't think that people are going to understand because we've already made that assumption for them because nobody understands because that's how our brain works. That's not the case. The more that you do share, the more understanding that others will have of what it is that you're going through. And then also the more that you won't feel alone. You'll find that a lot of people struggle with anxiety. A lot of people are on benzos, believe it or not, on a non-addictive form. I'm not saying that those are necessarily the way to go. I am prescribed Xanax. It's trial and error for what works for you. If you ever get on any kind of medication, make sure you're with a doctor on it. Make sure that you're communicating with your doctor on it because it is about finding the tools that help you fight through life. And sometimes it revolves around medication, and that's okay. Remember that. That's okay. You're okay. So explaining to them, you're going to find 1 in 4 people struggle with a mental illness. Talk with them. Share. Let them know exactly what it is you're going through. Let them know your experiences. I mean, I've had friends that when I relate the best to is when they're telling me their stories of like, dude, my car smells like vomit right now because I couldn't make it into work and I threw up in my car. Or I had crap on my leg from drooling because I'm literally that incapacitated. That is what anxiety is. So if you are out there struggling, make sure you reach out and get help. I mean, down below in the description, I even have a link to BetterHelp. If you want to try online therapy, my best suggestion is get with a therapist on it, no matter what it is, in person, online, however. I don't give two fucks, only that you're taking care of you. Down below, even I have different coping tools that I use, links that like fidget cubes, fidget spinners that help me when it comes to just even the social anxiety part of things. Hit that like and subscribe button. Comment down below. I'd love to know your thoughts. I'd love to know your feelings on it. I'd love to know how you've explained this to others, because the more that we share, the more that nobody goes it alone. That's why I created a nonprofit, Driven Together. It bridges the gap between a crisis hotline and therapy, of that in between of sharing all the tools, resources that we have to make sure that no one goes it alone and that nobody struggles, because too many of us do. I mean, you're a BAMF. You're a badass motherfucker. You made it through 100% of your worst days to make it through two today. So click that like and subscribe button. Let's do this together.